Hello everyone. Today we are going to paint this flower. Watercolor paintings comes with few layers. The first layers I don't use that much paint, so I will mix a bit of paint with lots of water. You can choose any red or magenta color that you like. I use a ceramic plate that I can find in my kitchen to mix the paint. For the first layer I use a big round brush that will enough to cover the area of the flower. I will simply just apply the paint onto the flower. You need to let one side of the flower or one part of the flower fully dry before you move on to the next one. Like what I'm doing now, I start with one part and then I move away to the other part so it doesn't meet each other. As I wait for these two petals to dry out, I decided to paint the stigma first. I just mix a bit of red and some oranges. So for this one, the lines are quite refined. I basically just follow the sketch that I already make, and using the tip of the brush, just simply follow the form. Sometimes with the big brush, it's easy to use too much water, so you can just dry out. You can dry out the paintbrush with the paper towel and start again. After I finish the stigma, I move on to another petal. You can also do a little bit of gradation. So for the end of the petal that closer to the stigma, I'll just wash off the brush a little bit so it has less paint. And then you can see how the color is softened in the center of the flower. To paint the second layer, I think you need a little bit of the brush skill. If you haven't watched my previous videos yet, there are some videos that are perfectly easy for beginners, but I think for these flowers, you need a little bit of skill and practice. You also need a good paintbrush. The paintbrush that I'm using has really good elasticity, meaning the shape will get back to pointy when you lift it up from the paper. So this brush is really easy to use on the small details like what I'm doing now. So on the second layer, you're gonna make a little bit of texture following the shape of the flower and draw some lines. And you can still also soften the lines with some water. So you just add more water on the same paintbrush and then just brush off the paint a little bit and then start again with the lines. This part is a little bit intuitive as well as you actually just see the reference, which part that has more texture and less, or which part that has more lighting or less lighting. There are some part of the petals that are sort of folded. You just leave that part out and then we can sort it out later. You can see how I move on from one petal to another. So one petal will be completely blank and then the other petal will be having two layers already. So this is for just I'm waiting for one part to be fully dried before I start the one next to it, so the paint wouldn't mix or blend. So if you think about it, when you repeat the same step on the each petals, you have 5 exercise. So you will definitely get better from one petal to another. If you just started learning watercolor, don't stretch too much if the result is different from one petal to another because obviously this is practice. Most of us wouldn't get really good on the first try, but the process of watercolor itself is actually fun. So I think you should really just enjoy the process, and it's actually relaxing. You can always start again the same painting on a different paper when you finish this one. As you understood how the brush and the water and the paints work, I'm sure the second painting will work better for you. I started watercolor not long ago, just a few years ago. And that time I don't even have any idea what kind of paint I'm using, what kind of brushes I'm using, what will I paint. So I basically just give myself some time to try things out and to learn from other artists. Lucky that today we have YouTube so we can just learn from other artists and follow the way they paint until you find your own way to paint. On the last petal, it is a bit tricky because there's a stigma just right in the middle of it. So you just need to be really careful and make sure the stigma is fully dry to add the first layer of the petal. If you can see, the center part of the flower is actually darker and it has a different color. For this one, I mix a few colors. I mix a little bit of black, purple, and red. I'm using a really small round brush to color the center of the flower. As you can see, I just colored the center, and then as I go out from the center, I soften the color on the edge of the center. So it makes a little bit of gradation, if that makes sense. To make gradation, I'm also adding the second layers. So I just basically using exactly the same colors that I used before. It's just more dense paint. And you basically just add some more colors on some of the part of the stigma. The thing with watercolor is sometimes the color gets a little bit lighter when the paint is fully dry. So you just have to see when the paint is dry if you want to add more colors or not. In this case, I'm adding more colors to the center of the flower so then it looks darker. After that's done, I added the second layer of on the last petal. This one is also a bit tricky, considering the stigma is just the center of the flower. After that, I just colored the part of the flower that is the part of the petal that is folded. So I just make a little bit of red and make gradation. I would like the color of the flower to be contrast and bright red. So I'm adding another layers. So I'm adding another layer with the small brush. So basically I'm just refining the texture of the flower. I see which part of the petal that's going to be darker and add more texture there. I'm doing the same movement as I did in the second layer, only with thinner lines and just on the small part of the flower. And then on the last touch, I added a bit more color on the center of the flower. That's it. Our painting is done today. You can see on my plate what type of colors that I used on this flower. If you find this video useful, please go to my channel and subscribe. It will definitely give me more support to make more tutorial videos like this. I already uploaded some more watercolor tutorial videos. There are different flowers and different colors. If you haven't heard about me, my name is Keishart and I'm a watercolor artist from Australia. If you want to learn watercolors and you worry about your ability to make the sketch, you can go to my website and download free sketches. You can simply print them out directly on watercolor paper and just start your painting. I also would love to hear from you after you try this at home. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I hope to see you in the next one.